Hi, my name is Eve Pierpont, and I'm the editor for mxdwn's music feature section. I'm here today with Aaron Pauley from Of Mice and Men. Hi, Aaron, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Pretty good. So Tether's lyrics focus on how art can help cope with feelings like anxiety, isolation, and anguish. Where did the idea come from to write the lyrics with this in mind? How has art helped you cope with such feelings?
I think that was sort of a culmination of a bunch of different losses and tragedies and stuff happening in our lives, sort of collectively as a band and like in individually and whatnot. And so I think that was sort of being there for your family was something that everybody had to do in some capacity or another, and it seemed like sort of at different times and in different struggles and things like that. So I think it was just very prevalent in everybody's lives, so that when we get together and start creating stuff, it's usually it's a way of us expressing ourselves and sort of letting out and sort of materializing whatever we're going through into something that we can maybe analyze and understand a little bit. But so I think that's probably where that came from.
Interesting. I love that. It's definitely very relevant, very true. How has it been to change headspaces a little bit while producing music, going from more of a live mindset to one that is more about the listener at home?
um I don't know. It's interesting because we just got off tour. So I feel like right now, maybe I'm still in that mindset, but we're like starting to work on some new ideas and whatnot here and there. But um, I don't know. It's something that I feel like if you don't think too heavily about one way or the other, and you can just enjoy the act of creating while you're creating and not necessarily think of what it's got to do after the fact, that you can kind of stay more focused on it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Can you share any of the those ideas that you have going on that you were just referencing?
Oh, the new ideas? No.
Yeah.
all that stuff is still being worked on. Very
I
infant
understand.
ideas.
Just had to ask. So what was it like to self-produce Tether?
It was a lot of fun. It was um a fair amount of pressure and a lot of work. I think doing something cohesive like that. It's we produced the album before Echo, but we released that and we wrote it and produced it in EPs. So doing an album is like doing the three EPs all at once, basically. So um, it definitely all taught us, I think, lessons in like organization and um, that was probably a big one. But no, it's a lot of fun, and it's we're blessed to have worked with the producers that we've worked with in the past. So we were at the time just sponges of knowledge and wanting to learn everything we could. So now, since the post-COVID era, when everything was shut down and we basically the studio we used to go to down here like sold and closed, and um no, I think it's a lot of fun. It puts a lot of the control and in our hands, and at the same time there's a lot of responsibility and like buckling down and really like honing in on our decision making, because there isn't an outside element telling us like, okay, yes or no. So it's like we have to decide yes or no. And a lot of times creatively you can just work on stuff for a really long time without deciding things. So
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So was there anything unique or different employed while creating this record compared to working on Echo?
um I'm trying to think. Not really. I think there was a little bit more, we felt a little bit more creative freedom, especially in like the sound design elements and things like that with this record after doing Echo, because Echo had a lot of those elements, and we felt like it introduced them into a way that wasn't I suppose it wasn't jarring enough for like fans to talk to us about it about it being a problem. So we sort of felt, I guess, a little more uh confident and just excited by that sort of element of it. So that was fun to dabble in.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's super interesting. So how did you map out the order for of the songs for Tether?
We knew the first song and last song. Zephyrus and Integration were, I think, the two songs that were finished first. And I say finished in terms of like being written pieces, not necessarily like final recordings or whatnot. But um, so I think that sort of outlined it. And then as we were coming up with new ideas and as we're sort of honing stuff in and saying like, yes, this is going to go on it. No, this isn't going to go on it. Um, that sort of starts to fall into place. And then ultimately we had a track listing that was, I think, basically exactly the track listing as it is now, except Into the Sun and Indigo were flip flop places. And I think it was Sal at our label that was like, hey, this would be interesting if we swapped these two. And I thought, like, oh, that is kind of interesting. And it's sort of interesting in the storytelling aspect of it, I guess, too. Um, if that still exists, if people still listen to albums for that.
Yeah, right. I know what you mean.
But no, so it's sort of like it's sort of an afterthought, I guess. It's super important, but it's definitely something that happens once all the songs are finished and you can kind of dabble around with it, you know.
Totally, totally. I've heard other people say that very similar thing
Mm-hmm.
before. So then, kind of going off what you said about Zephyros, I was going to say it is a great closing song with a sort of like ambient, ethereal feel in some parts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In those, yeah. So where did the decision come to be to like kind of include those parts and have that mixed in?
Well, so what's actually funny is we that song existed for a while and didn't have any of the synthy stuff.
Hmm.
And it was cool. It was definitely its own vibe, but it was as more songs are being done and developed, we definitely start to see where it's lackluster in certain places. You know, as everything starts to get more built up and polished, you start going back to the first ideas, and you're like, oh, maybe we got to bring these up to par with the new ideas. Um, and we were just like messing around on Zoom, pulling up random synthesizers or whatnot. And I was just sitting on a keyboard, just sort of dabbling around on keys, like sitting here. And we got on that patch with those first sort of notes that are in the intro. And then um, we're like, whoa, that's really cool. Cause it's a whole different vibe. It's something that's kind of more linear. So as stuff is going on in the song, it feels sort of like it's floating around this sort of central synthy element that doesn't really go anywhere, which I guess is sort of comforting, you know, like
Hmm.
a comforting musical element or whatever. And then the actual melody for the synth line I took from Pure Imagination, Willy Wonka.
Oh,
Dun 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 dun. Basically just took those notes and then used them in our song.
that's awesome. No, I love that. That's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Um, can you share the creative process behind Castaway?
I'm trying to think back that far.
I know.
It's funny because it's like, yeah, the record was, we were probably nearly finishing around this time last year, like finishing
Okay,
the album.
yeah,
Um, which is crazy because we released it in October.
I
So we like sit
know.
on it all year.
Yeah, yeah.
I think with Castaway, that was a song that Alan had a demo for, and it was just like a very obvious, straightforward. And I say that, but it was like a for us like a very obvious, straightforward kind of like rock song. Felt good, sounded good. It had the riffs. It sort of had all the elements that we look for. So we like stockpiled it because we like, there's a part of making records about thinking of things artistically, and then there's also a part of thinking things like from a more utilitarian point of view of like, okay, do we have songs that sort of service these different um listener checklists, like reasons why people might like our band, things like that. So it's like having um I don't know. I just lost my train of thought. I just trailed off. Started thinking about checklists and like saw a big checklist in my brain and just went off a
It's
cliff right there.
okay. I totally understand.
It happens.
It happens. Um, so where did the decision come from to release Warpaint first and then Castaway and Indigo as singles?
Ooh, so the label. Long story short is the label. So basically like we with our input of course, but basically like they have A&Rs there that sit and listen to the record once we've turned it in and they say, "Hey, based on this and based on what our radio team is thinking, here are what we feel like are the singles and here's what we feel like is the best order to put stuff out to um peak interest and I guess like maintain attention spans while you're dropping music and dropping an album." um yeah, so basically like with discussion amongst everybody, ultimately the label has the final say in what's released when. But we felt like Warpaint was a good song because it sort of bridged the gap between some of the heavier stuff on Echo and then where some of the weirder places where Tether ends up, I think, is an album.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely see that. And definitely get that answer. The label has, yeah, I've noticed a common common thread amongst the singles that are,
Yeah,
put out for
generally,
albums.
because ultimately it's their call on release and whatnot. But
Gotcha.
generally speaking, I think labels that are worth their weight in salt, I think, are ones that trust their artists.
For sure. So the song "Tether" speaks to being someone's tether, along with it being the title of the album. Can you tell me a little bit about the background of that um, and how did it come to be titled "Tether" and what does that kind of mean to you?
Um, yeah, so that song kind of came about from actually initially it came about from messing around with a bunch of different uh samples of things that Tino had made where they were basically like, oh, here's some just random loop ideas or things like that, and sort of dragging them out of a Dropbox and into Logic and just sort of creating the loop out of old things and recycling ideas that don't end up becoming songs, but you can take a piano part from it or something. So I think that's initially where it started. Um, and I don't know, to me, the song kind of sounded like I just kept envisioning like Deadliest Catch or something. I kept imagining like a harbor, like while listening to it. And so I think the word harbor kept jumping out to me. And so from there, head into the harbor and then sort of developing the song from there. It's really weird. It's really weird to talk about because I don't really feel like I ever like write anything. Like I sit down and think of it. It's like sometimes ideas are just sort of beamed to you and your brain just latches onto something. And I'll sit and I'll work very diligently on it and then at the end be like, "Whoa, where'd that come from?"
No, I
I
get
don't know.
that.
It's a
That's
little
super
esoteric,
interesting.
but
Yeah, no, for sure. I can see that definitely being a way to go about it. So what was it like to create and record Indigo?
oh, that song almost didn't make the record.
Oh, really?
Oh, only because honestly, that was the last one I did and finished and had lyrics and vocals for. Because initially I was sort of approaching the song like I would most songs, which is like to say there's one vocalist doing one vocal line or like one sort of main central thing. There's always like different layers and things, but there's usually just like one thing to follow. And in Indigo, in the chorus, it blossoms and there's like, I think 10 or 11 different vocal lines happening at the same time. And so before that was in there, and before the lyric was what it was, it went through two or three different versions, and I just wasn't super happy with any of it. Um, and it was just sort of messing around with it one day, um, where I did the chorus for it, and I was like, oh, I actually really like this, and I like sort of metaphorically what it represents to have this sort of different range of vocalizations from like very soft high vocals that are meant to sound pretty and like screaming, and it's all happening sort of at the same time. Um, yeah, so I don't know. It took a long time for me to be happy with my performance on it because I feel like my job is to not get in the way of the music. Like once, because the four of us work on the music together, and once we're super happy with it, it's like the last thing I want to do is become less happy with it because of me.
Yeah, no,
you know,
totally
you
understandable.
know, so there's a lot of times where it's like, don't get in the way of it. Like find something that sort of complements it lyrically and melodically, but don't make it about you and don't get in the way. Those are usually my two rules.
Gotcha. Nice. Okay. That's also very super interesting. Good to know. I like that. So I saw that you have some international tour dates, as well as some in the US, along with being on the lineup for Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival. How does it feel to look forward to all of those live shows?
Oh, it's crazy. It's funny because we were just on tour for 2 months, basically, no, almost 3 months, like a month and a half, 6 day break, month and a half ish. And then it's like, I've been home for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and I'm like, what's a show like?
Yeah, no.
And before that, it had been 3 years. But no, I'm super excited. I'm excited to get back to markets that we haven't played in years, and I mean, damn, it's like three albums worth of material that we haven't toured on, so playing in places that we haven't been for a while. So I'm really excited. It'll be
I'm
super fun.
sure. Yeah, no, that's gonna be a lot of fun. And then I was gonna ask, how was it to tour with Bullet for my Valentine last year?
Oh man, that was such a fun tour. The fans were amazing. Um, Vended, love those kids. It was funny because we'd met them when they were still young preteens. I don't even think they were teenagers yet. On the tour that we did with Slipknot and Marilyn Manson in like
Hmm.
2016.
Oh wow.
And it was funny because I remember there was like this like if you could go back and watch it, like you could turn it into like a Hallmark movie. But there was a time where Simon, who is Sean Clown from Slipknot's son, was sitting on Tino's drum kit and he starts playing, and we both Tino and I kind of look at each other like this kid's gonna go places. Straight out of a Hallmark movie. But now they've been touring and just grinding, and they rip. Yeah, that was a great tour to get back in front of all of our fans. Um, Especially, just post COVID and taking a couple years off.
Yeah, no, for sure. I could definitely see that. That's awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure interviewing you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Have fun touring. I'm sure you will, but enjoy it. I'm glad you get to get back out there on those stages. I know it's going to be a blast.
Yeah,
But
it's awesome.
so much
And
for
it's
your
awesome. It's awesome for fans. Like it's,
it is.
for all of us, we're live music fans
Yes.
first and foremost. So it's like live music for us. It's important when we're the ones playing, but it's important when we're the ones going and attending. And it's awesome.
No, exactly.
Happy to be back.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, so thank you so much for your time. Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
thank you.
It's been a pleasure. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
All righty, take it easy.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.